welcome to this topic here, which I think is very pertinent, important, and it tends to come up as a question for our students as well as alums. We're talking about different kinds of skills. So here we're going to cover the top 7 transferable power skills. And we call them power skills because they are skills of influence. They are about working with people and how to navigate specific situations in the work environment. Transferable, what are they? They tend to be relevant skills and abilities for success across multiple life experiences. And so here we challenge you to consider the full breadth of your resume, your portfolios, all of your experiences that have helped you grow as a person. And we're going to take a wider perspective and look at these various skills. So they can come from your career, that dimension of your life. They can also come from the social sphere. If you've had any involvement in activities, in a volunteer, in any organizations, any missions. Also, we can look at personal. So these could be unique to you. They may not necessarily involve other people, but they could be personal life paths that you have taken, personal learning modes or experiences or progress that you have made gain in. They are transferable because these are skills taken from one role to another, and because of this, they can become highly valuable, and we will explain why. Transferable skills can be overlooked, and sometimes this may be for a number of these reasons, but typically we tend to recognize that they may not appear relevant to the current job or industry. So as software engineers, you may not think that your experience as a salesperson may have relevance, or your administrative functions, or if you've worked in a bank for the past 2 or 3 years. There just inherently may not be a connection seen between those experiences and what you will be doing as software engineers. However, these transferable skills are enclosed within all of those experiences, and we can learn how to extract them. Some skills acquired years ago. So if you've had a CPA, for example, or if you were a doctor, if you were a lawyer, if you've been a licensed mortgage broker, any number of these kinds of skills that you might have acquired years prior to, they can also be overlooked because you are a software engineer, and so it may not appear relevant right now. They may also you may also not recognize how they are used in the current days and times. And so that also is about being able to bridge the connection between your work environment as an engineer and those past experiences. And overall, there may just be a lack of confidence in those skills. You may not have used them for some time, and so you may feel a bit rusty, or might not have talked about them, articulated them to people for some time. And so being able to extract the gems and the lessons from those skills may be a bit challenging today. But finishing this presentation, you will have greater clarity on what they are, and then also how they can be very useful in bringing up in your future conversations as an engineer. Each transferable skill is an asset, and this is very important to recognize that your experiences prior to full stack and Grace Hopper are not in vain. They are not to be tossed away or set aside, and that the meat of the role, while you may not be doing them anymore, the core characteristics, strengths, and these transferable skills are valuable, and you more likely than not will be utilizing them in your new work environment if you are not already utilizing them now. So each of these skills shows an employer in your network overall that you have a wider skill set and that you are more broad-based. And because of that broad base, that breadth of understanding, you can begin to apply your new skills in new ways and provide unique insights. Demonstrates you're well-rounded, right? The more you practice the skill, the better you become at it. So if you've had a lot of experience in project management, you may very well be carrying that skill set over to your projects when you're working in teams, agile work environments as an engineer. They can also be discovered from each past experience. So we will look at your volunteer, your work, internship, business, any of these kinds of ventures uh, can house these transferable power skills. So let's get to the seven. The first one, teamwork. So teamwork is an overall skill set, which describes the ability to work effectively in a team or a group to achieve specific goals. Now, what can that look like, and where could you begin pulling these kinds of experiences from? Anytime that you've experienced conflict resolution, where you may have had a disagreement with a team member, and at some point in time you came to an understanding where you decided on a specific course of action. So the team was disunified or not unified at one point, and then through your communication and the way that you work with each other, you were able to become unified towards a common goal. Planning is another teamwork capacity where you are able to foresee ahead of time any challenges, any roadblocks, or even not negative. You can just be thinking about also positive outcomes that you want to concentrate on. And you really understand how to take the proper steps and to be able to do this not just with your own mind, but to do this with a mesh of minds, because there may be three minds, there may be four minds, five minds, all within your team who are thinking differently and have different views. So, how do you operate within this kind of environment to achieve specific goals? Anytime that you've been trusted with a specific task, and so within your team, it's more likely than not you're not all going to be doing the same thing. Because if you are, then you are focusing more on one space or one resource or dimension of the project while other dimensions are being ignored. So it's highly likely that you will be dividing up your perspectives and resources so that you can all focus on different things. That space that you are trusted with tends to be the strength that people can rely on you for. So any experiences you've had in your past work environments, your past affiliations, as you'll see in the next bullet there, if you can pull from specific examples as to when this took place, when you planned, when you had conflict resolution, and when you were able to be trusted with specific tasks and you carried those out, these are all demonstrable examples of the teamwork power skill. Let's move to number two, leadership. This is the capacity to demonstrate initiative, guide, and set an example. So there are really three components to this, and underneath these three are different types of capacities. So you will be able to pull from your past experiences if you've received any increased responsibilities, or if you've taken on new responsibilities or you've created new responsibilities. So all that means is you now are stewarding newer resources, either people or initiatives, and your ability to handle these responsibilities says something about your mental state, your maturity, your emotional state, and really your ability to carry the weight of a specific goal. Any action that you've taken to create something new. So think about your past experience, and if you've been doing this in some form, you have set yourself into a leadership capacity. Mind you, just want to make a side note about this. Leadership is not about the title. It is, you don't have to have a leadership designated title, meaning you don't have to be called a leader. You don't have to be called a founder, a CEO, a creator. You don't need those titles to demonstrate the leadership capacity. Right? This is very important to recognize. Otherwise, you may overlook these leadership capacities that you already have, and that you're demonstrating. So experiences being a voice that represents others' ideas, and this tends to lead into the teamwork as well, in that if there are people in your team or your group, anywhere in your past experience where they needed someone to speak on their behalf, and you're sort of the person who can communicate that vision, the collective intent for everyone, then you are using a leadership capacity. So grab that experience. Be willing to talk about it. Also, think about any time that you are supporting someone else's growth. This is an opportunity for you to see outside of yourself, and you are using everything that you have gained, you've developed over time, and you are now imparting that onto someone else so that they can grow. This is also a leadership capacity. So, just like the number one, think of this point here and begin to examine your resume, your credentials, and pull experiences where you've done this. Number three, internal motivation. Very different from external motivation. Another way to call this is intrinsic. So, intrinsic drive to improve oneself. This means that your motivation, your what is pushing you to become better or to achieve a goal is not reliant upon what is going on outside of you. This is important to make as a distinction. If your goals are dependent or your motivation is dependent upon goals outside of you, then you are subject to change as those things outside change. And so being able to show the power skill of having internal motivation means that you can learn independently. You can find solutions without somebody having to tell you to do it or to hint at it. You are able to recognize that from within yourself and take the necessary action to resolve the challenge. And then you're also resilient. And that last part connects to the difference between the internal and the external motivation. If you are internally resilient and motivated, then your external circumstances will not impact or deflate the motivation you have to achieve a goal. So think about your past experiences where if you've done any independent learning, if you've taken a course, have you gone to lynda.com? Have you gone to Code Academy? Have you taken a seminar? Any one of these examples you can pull from to demonstrate that you have internal or intrinsic motivation. Number four, time management. This is a pretty common term here, and it's almost cliche, but nonetheless, it is extremely important. Time management as a transferable power skill is really about efficiently prioritizing commitments and time. In a world where we have increasing information, and especially like either on the job or outside the job, and just on our phones, and the amount, the sheer volume of content that is hitting us challenges this power skill. So if you have it, you will be very valued, especially if you can demonstrate that you do this effectively. This is about project management experiences. So if you can pull from any of your past, credentials where you have effectively taken on a project and you were able to organize that time so that the resources and the people and the focus involved met a successful outcome, that is an example that you can talk about. You can also talk about completing a project within a specific deadline. And when you do talk about that project, then you can also describe what it took in order to achieve that deadline. You can also talk about what the challenges were and how you were able to overcome those challenges in terms of time. Let's say, for example, that you had a team of four and four members were each delegated a different task to complete the project. You have a timeline set, you have all of the steps taken care of, and one person falls short. And they did not or were not able to deliver for some reason. Maybe they were out, they were ill, something happened. What was your course of action to ensure that that particular task was complete and you met the deadline? That's an experience that you can share to talk about time management. Guiding others to complete a project to meet a deadline, that's a bit different because you are not now the sole person responsible for the outcome. You have multiple members. And so you are utilizing both the teamwork skill, you're also utilizing the leadership capacity, you're also utilizing the internal intrinsic motivation to assist someone else in being able to focus their time and resources to complete a project. And then also experiences planning out your own professional growth, right? So let's not forget management on a job is actually an example of a time management capacity, a power skill. How do you set up your own day? Can you give examples of what it looked like on a day-to-day when you were at a particular role? How did you plan for yourself? How did you set up your scale and your grades so that you could meet a particular deadline, or get a promotion or grow or whatever the case may be? Can you talk about that? If so, then you will be demonstrating the time management power skill. Number 5, communication. This is a very big one. Another cliche term. Underneath communication are multiple capacities. So this is about being able to write, speak, and use body language accurately for the situation. We include all modes of communication, and it's important to preface this by for the situation, right? So there are times when assertiveness is important. There are times when listening is important. There are times when asking questions is important. There are times when providing solutions or suggestions or answers is important. Your ability to know and recognize the situation and knowing how to navigate them and to do this effectively will demonstrate your ability to communicate well. So, in your experiences, let's look at being able to resolve teammate conflicts, reflecting back to the teammate capacity. And by now in our number 5, you can see how these start weaving into each other, and that strength in one capacity can amplify the strength in another and another. So let's look at resolving teammate conflicts. Your ability to write, speak, and use body language accurately for the situation. You then have to be able to recognize what kind of conflict it is and what is the most appropriate course of action in that moment to generate the outcome that you are looking for, which ought to be a win-win for everyone. So experiences where you are doing that can be useful. You can also look at experiences writing messages that achieve the specific success. So if you've sent an important email, an important letter out to, I don't know, an important constituent in an organization, if you have written up a press release on something, if you have sent a message to, the staff, if you were in a manager's role that helped to motivate the staff and they were able to take different action or understand something differently because of it. Those are opportunities that you can pull from to demonstrate that you have the communication power skill. Also, opportunities that provide you with presentation exposure, even if this was for you to have a quota of a certain amount of workshops, presentations, in a given time period, being able to note that and talk about those experiences will demonstrate communication power skills. And any panel, workshop, any kind of group learning exposure that you can talk about will also illustrate that you have this capacity. And so remember, it's not just also being exposed to it and doing it, but it's also your ability to reflect on the experiences that will indicate to a future employer or just a professional peer that you know what you're talking about because you've gone through it and you also have the understanding of how it works based on the experience. Let's look at number 6, research and analysis. Another way to talk about this is critical thinking. Is another cliche term. And of course, underneath this will be a whole host of other smaller capacities or smaller power skills. But really, this is about the ability to collect, understand, and articulate information. Any presentation experience will be able to illustrate this because in order to do your presentation, you first need to know your audience. You need to know what you want to talk about. And that has to involve, in some form, some kind of research. And then you have to be able to distill that information so people can understand. Projects that involve data to help oneself or the team to make a decision. That also can involve something as simple as doing a series of Google searches so that you can find out the best location for, I don't know, the best location for a venue or the best location to move into a new building. These kinds of experiences will show that you both have long-term thinking, the critical thinking, as well as the ability to make your case as to why the choice that you have provided based on your research would be a cool one or a useful one or valuable one. So collecting, understanding, and articulating information will be able to illustrate this research and analysis power skill. And lastly, number 7, looking at resourcefulness, by far one of the most important. I would say resourcefulness sits at the foundation of all of these power skills because it's your ability to find or create ways to overcome difficulties. Now, how do you define a difficulty? Well, we would say that a difficulty could be something as major as a building issue. It can also be as small as, choosing which person would be best for a particular project. A difficulty in this sense just means something that is not yet solved and you're working on how to solve it. So think back to your past experiences. If you've had examples of how you solved a work problem or a volunteer problem, organizational problem, you're demonstrating resourcefulness. Challenging experiences that made you stronger, sharper, smarter, more focused, etc. These are all experiences that help you to grow, and if you can speak to them, then you're demonstrating resourcefulness. The key word in here is resource. So, how do you find resources, both external and internal, to do what you need to do so that you can excel or expand? So, some basic tips on this. Transferable skills are demonstrated through experiences and examples, and so you'll see a theme, throughout our uh, presentations here that having examples and scenarios to talk about are extremely important because when you answer a question, especially in an interview environment, you're providing the answer, but then it's also important for you to provide a scenario that can sort of encapsulate what you are doing or what you understand, right? The demonstration, you're not actually doing the thing or the capacity at the table. And so for these kinds of skills, you need examples to talk about. So review your resume, your LinkedIn, your GitHub, your Angel List, wherever you have profiles or credentials, that are visible. It's important to revisit these past experiences, and your education as well can also be spaces to look into. So you then choose specific examples from these experiences that demonstrate these skills. So leadership, for example, look into your past work, your past volunteer and other experiences, and then see where you have been demonstrating these skills. Really, really take them out, write them down somewhere, and practice being able to talk about those scenarios. From there, what we do is you then ask yourself, how do those skills make you a better engineer? And so you want to connect all of these capacities now that you have used before and may still be using. How does that improve you as an engineer? And that is the question that will really make you a unique programmer, because you then can show both your technical skills and then also these internal capacities that will only enhance your performance personally, but then also make you a great team member. Any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Here at the Career Success Team, we are available. Be well.